welcome here to TalkFCB and welcome back to the channel, guys. Coming up today, there is plenty of news to discuss as the fallout does continue, and believe me, there are real talks going on right now at the club about what we need to do in the short term and indeed the long term to turn around the club's fortunes. But in today's video, we are going to be addressing some of the more controversial rumours right now. For instance, the likes of Frenkie de Jong being linked away from the club, Sergiño Dest as well, and indeed Marc-Andre, Ter Stegen, and we're also sadly going to be discussing two more players added to our growing injury list. It is all coming up. Let's do it. But I do want to start with some positive news, and I think actually on a personal level in terms of one particular player, because there's really good news for Alex Collado, because an official agreement has been reached there with Granada, so that Collado will join them on loan for the rest of the season. Granada there will pay Collado's full salary, and crucially, there is no buy option in that deal there between Barça and Granada. And indeed yesterday, as this deal was confirmed by the club themselves, I think this is fantastic news for him because he has had such a difficult and turbulent season. We all know about his situation there. He tried to leave the club on deadline day on loan. It fell through, and due to the La Liga registration rules, he couldn't play for us again this season. He's been sat on the sidelines waiting to get an opportunity, and now at Granada in La Liga, hopefully he's going to get some regular minutes. Hopefully he's going to play at his best, show exactly what he can do, which is real quality, and I'm sure that next summer Xavi will want to take a close look at Collado, and I really do wish him all the best. Then though, there is news on the club's injury situation. Let's start first of all with the obvious, which of course was Jordi Alba, who was subbed off there before half an hour against Bayern with a reoccurrence of that hamstring problem. The club indeed confirmed on Thursday that Alba is ruled out with that hamstring injury, and Barça are set to be without him until the new year now. He's not going to return before January. The club are going to give him the absolute maximum time to recover. They're not going to rush him back anymore. Alba is going to get that time on the sidelines, and he is out. That, though, is not the only injury, and also not the only hamstring injury, because now we move on to Memphis Depay, who was originally one of the very few players in this Barca squad who hadn't been injured. But as a result of that, of course, he'd played nearly every minute of every game, and it kind of seemed inevitable that before long, that run would come to an end, and that's exactly what happened there against Bayern. You may have seen him towards the end of that game struggling a bit physically, and it was confirmed on Thursday too that Memphis has picked up a left hamstring injury. The recovery time has not been specified by the club, but that injury will reportedly keep him out for at least 1 month. And again, just like with Alba, we're not going to see him until the new year, which, as we're going to be discussing tomorrow, provides Xavi with such a headache because our already limited forward options just became even more limited. But if we do indeed move on to the club's transfer plans, and I think it's really important to actually address there that both Xavi and the president Joan Laporta spoke in depth immediately after that game against Bayern on Wednesday, particularly there regarding the squad in terms of what we need to do, what we need to have in the squad, and even more importantly, what we don't need in the squad, who is deemed here surplus to requirements. So the club are very, very clear that we do need exits. That's going to begin in January. We're going to try and find clubs for several of the players in our squad that quite simply have no future here, and that's been the case for a long time now. I think it was also very interesting to see the likes of Laporta, Almani, Yuste, and indeed Jordi Cruyff. They were all present prior to yesterday's training session. That's not something that you see very often there, with the entire board arriving around training sessions where, again, with Xavi, talks took place to get a clear plan ahead of what is here a crucial January transfer window, and an even more important summer to come for this club. But here's the thing. Many of the players who us Barcelona fans feel are not at the level required to get us back to where we want to be, the players that we no longer want at the club. These are usually players there on very big contracts, often long ones too, and in order to get them out, we're going to end up receiving very little in return. In terms of transfer fees, we're not going to raise too much cash, which means that ahead of the coming transfer windows, there's a feeling inside and outside of the club that we may need to raise funds. And in doing that, we may be forced to sacrifice some of the few players within our squad that could raise big transfer fees, which in turn would raise the money that we need to strengthen the squad in other areas. But like I say, selling these players, it may be controversial. Because let's start with Sergiño Dest, and indeed right now, the latest rumours are that Xavi does not count on Dest. We've also heard this after Xavi arrived at the club as coach. I still think that it's very, very early to be drawing any conclusions, but the feeling right now is that Xavi is not convinced by him. He's not really seeing what he needs there from a true Barca fullback. I think it should also be said that throughout the season, Dest has been playing at left back at times. He's obviously been playing as well as a winger. He's not really suited in those roles. So I think he would probably say, I haven't really played that much in my natural role. But the feeling within the club is he needs to learn a lot. He needs to improve a lot to be that fullback that we need. Look at the game against Betis, for example. He was at fault really for not closing down, not being aware of Wanmi when he sneaked in there to score the winner, which ultimately saw us lose that game. And when you're looking at the rumours, Barca apparently would be willing to accept an offer of 30 million euros for Sergiño Dest. And as you can see here, the majority of Barca fans right now, when I conducted this poll on Twitter yesterday, people were saying, maybe I would take that. Now, of course, you turn around and say, in that area right now, we don't have a lot else. Dani Alves, of course, will return in January. He would be an option in the short term, of course. But in the long term, what's going to be the aim at right back? Are we going to look to bring somebody else in? If you sell Dest for 30 million, can you then replace him quality-wise for less? And these are all the kind of decisions that the club will need to be thinking about if Dest's long-term future is not at Barca. But that is not all. Far, far from it. Because it's also been reported since the defeat to Bayern that not only Dest could be used there to raise some funds, but potentially the club would seriously think about selling Frenkie de Jong if an offer arrived between 80 and 100 million euros. With the likes of Man City very much interested, Man United as well, PSG still interested as they were when we originally signed de Jong. And the brutal truth is, they would all be very, very interested in de Jong because he's a very, very good player. But again, when I conducted this poll on Twitter, the majority, and I think actually a lot more than I was expecting, said, if 100 million arrived for de Jong, I would say yes. And that did surprise me because I think de Jong as a player is somebody who I've always been so excited about at Barca ever since we signed him. I think he could be the real future of our midfield. I think he could be such an outstanding player. And I think it's one of those players that if we did sell him, if it did come down to that, he would go to Man City, he would go to a club like PSG, and he would absolutely tear it up. I think he would be so good, and we'd look at that and think, oh dear, what have we done? But at the same time, what I can see here is the fact that people are saying, we have a lot of talent in midfield. We have players coming through there, a lot of players in midfield. We are very well covered. And if we sold de Jong for 100 million, that is 100 million that we could use in our defence, in our attack. Money that usually we wouldn't have to spend. We wouldn't have that money. But if you raised it with de Jong, is it worth the sacrifice? And I think that's the reason why people are saying maybe yes. Because I think for the majority of us Barcelona fans, we all massively rate de Jong. Yes, he's not going through a particularly good spell right now. I think, honestly, he's caught between positions. We still don't know exactly what is his strength, what is the best position to play de Jong in to get the best out of him. We thought when he came in that eventually he would replace Busquets, but that's still not something that's happening to this day. And I think that is why now the rumours are starting about maybe, if we were absolutely desperate, de Jong could be used to raise that kind of money, but I think it's too soon. I think right here, right now, this is never going to be something that would happen in a January transfer window. This would be something that we'd look to in the summer, and I just think for the rest of the season here, we need to give Xavi time with de Jong. Maybe he can help him find his natural role in that midfield, get the team functioning around him, because I think if you improve the rest of the team there, if the overall level of this team improves, you would start to see a much better de Jong. But certainly as this season goes on, we want to see more, of course, not just from him, but from everyone. And the pressure, it is on. And speaking of pressure, let's talk about Ter Stegen. Because just like with Dest, just like with de Jong, Ter Stegen has also been reported in the media as one of the players who could well be on the transfer list. He could be used again to raise some funds. Reportedly, their Barca would be looking for 40 to 50 million euros for Ter Stegen, also bearing in mind that he's the best paid goalkeeper in the world, massive wages, and right now, Is he justifying that? There's been a lot of talk as well about the fact that if you did sell Ter Stegen, again, bringing that money in, could you replace him with Andre Onana, somebody who is going to be completely free right now? He's very, very close to joining Inter Milan, but that deal is not done. Barça, given the fact that he used to play here as well, of course, he was in the Barça youth setup. Onana remains very much so an option for this club, and I just think right now, aside from whether or not you think about cashing in on Ter Stegen, getting him out the door, what I think needs to happen now, we need to wake this guy up, and I spoke about it a few weeks ago over on MORETALKFCB. I think right now, he needs to spend some time on the sidelines. You need to try and shock this guy back into action. We spoke about before the fact that he was really pushed by Claudio Bravo during his time at the club, how he got the best out of him, how Ter Stegen raised his level to make sure that he was the number one. And I think right now, he's just too comfortable. He is so settled right now. He thinks, you know what, I'm going to play no matter what. I can make a mistake. I can make 2 mistakes, but I'm still going to play every game. Shouldn't be like that. And especially when we've got quality on the sidelines. You can bring Neto in. You can bring Iñaki Peña in. You could give Arnau Tenas a game or 2. Whatever you have to do here to make Ter Stegen realise, I'm not doing well enough. I am not performing at the level that's expected of me. And in the short term, regardless of whether he's on the transfer list or whether he's not, we need better. We need you to do better. And in order to do that, I would bench him. And like I say, guys, there are plenty of players who the club are looking to move on. You know, it's not just about these 3. These are just players, for instance, like Dest, like De Jong, like Ter Stegen, who are very, very high-profile names, very good players at their best, and therefore they could be used if we need to generate funds, if we need to bring in money in order to fully strengthen our squad. Would you sacrifice any of them? Dest, De Jong, Ter Stegen, which of those would you be open to selling for the right sum, if any? That's what I would like to know from you today. And like I say, tomorrow, it's going to be a really, really interesting video ahead of the weekend's game against Osasuna. How is Xavi going to cope with this injury crisis? And how is our attack going to look in that game? It's all going to be coming up for you, and I hope you're doing well. I will see you tomorrow, and thank you indeed for watching and for supporting. But until next time, as always, Visca El Barça!